Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture what you do every single night after a long day of playing or going to school. You put on your favorite pajamas, you climb into your nice cozy bed, and you pull that heavy blanket right up to your chin. Down here on Earth, gravity holds you down like a gentle, invisible hug, kinda making you feel safe and sleepy. But today, we're gonna look at how bedtime works when you're orbiting the Earth at thousands of miles per hour. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever tried to sleep while just floating in midair? Without gravity, there's literally no such thing as down to pull you onto a mattress. So trying to sleep without being tied down to a bed in space? Well, it'd be a lot like trying to take a nap on a roller coaster. You just wouldn't stay put.
You see, bedtime on Earth is perfectly predictable, all thanks to gravity. But in space? Oh, it's a totally different story. If an astronaut up on the International Space Station just closed their eyes to sleep, they wouldn't stay in one spot. Because of microgravity, they'd slowly start drifting across the room like a runaway balloon. Imagine waking up because you played a giant game of bumper cars with a wall, or accidentally bonked your head on a $1 million computer, or bumped right into another astronaut in the middle of the night. It would be pure chaos.
So, the invisible trickster causing all this bouncing around is something called microgravity. And that's basically just the feeling of weightlessness in space, where your body feels almost zero gravity. Because of it, a normal bed with a squishy mattress and soft sheets would be completely useless on the space station. I mean, you can't lie on a bed if there's no force pulling you down onto it, right? So NASA engineers had to completely rethink what a bedroom actually is.
And here is their brilliant solution to the gravity problem. Step 1. Astronauts zip themselves up into a super heavy-duty sleeping bag. And Step 2. They literally strap that sleeping bag to a wall, or to the ceiling, or even the floor. Since there's no real up or down in space, they sleep strapped to the walls like cozy caterpillars inside a cocoon, or maybe like bats hanging upside down in a cave. It keeps them safely in one place all night long, so there are absolutely no surprise collisions in the dark.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how totally different the space environment is from your house. Your bedroom back on Earth probably has plenty of floor space to play around in. But a space bedroom? It's a tiny, private cabin roughly the size of a cozy treehouse pod, or, for the adults listening, an old-school telephone booth. Inside this little fort is their sleeping bag, a small reading light, a laptop to call their family, and a fan to keep the air flowing so they can breathe comfortably. It's super tiny, but it has everything they need.
Now, if you're thinking that sleeping inside a tiny wall closet sounds super uncomfortable, it's actually quite the opposite. Many astronauts describe sleeping in space with this exact quote, "feels like gently floating in water." Imagine relaxing in a giant swimming pool, just letting the water completely hold you up. Because there's no gravity telling your brain which way is down, you can sleep upside down or completely sideways, and to your body, it feels perfectly normal and incredibly relaxing.
But living in microgravity does do some pretty goofy things to your body too. When astronauts look in the mirror after waking up, they might actually ask, wait, why does my face look so puffy? Here on Earth, gravity is constantly pulling our blood and fluids down toward our legs. But in space, without that downward pull, all those fluids sort of float upwards toward the head. It's kind of like that funny, red-faced feeling you get when you hang upside down on the monkey bars for too long.
Because of all those floating fluids, astronauts get these round, puffy faces, and their noses often feel totally stuffed up, almost like they have a bad cold, which, can make it a little tricky to get comfortable at first. But there is an amazing superpower that comes with it. They experience absolutely zero pressure on their backs, zero pressure on their shoulders, and zero pressure on their hips. There are no mattress springs poking them and no tossing and turning trying to find that perfect comfortable angle.
So the crucial point is, once an astronaut's body finally gets used to these bizarre changes over the first few days, the feeling is completely magical. They actually report that sleeping in space feels exactly like floating on a cloud. No pressure, no aches, no pains, just pure, weightless relaxation provided entirely by the laws of physics. Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it?
Now check out this staggering number, 16. The International Space Station is zooming around the Earth so incredibly fast, literally faster than any superhero, that it completes a full orbit in just 90 minutes. That means these astronauts witness 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every single 24-hour day. Can you imagine trying to figure out when it's bedtime when the sun just keeps coming up every hour and a half?
Let's move on and see how this builds into their daily routine. Because if astronauts just followed the sun, they'd literally never sleep. So NASA uses a really clever trick. Step 1.
They follow a strict artificial clock based on coordinated universal time, so mission control tells them exactly when it's time to sleep. Step 2. To trick their brains into thinking it's daytime, they blast the station with bright white lights while they work. And then, Step 3. Right at bedtime, they switch over to warm, cozy lights to mimic a beautiful Earth sunset so they can finally get sleepy. With all these absolutely crazy changes, floating in a bag on a wall, seeing 16 sunrises a day, hanging upside down like a bat, it brings up a really fascinating question about the mind. Do astronauts actually dream in space? Like, do their brains still process the world the exact same way when they're completely detached from gravity?
Well, the answer is an enthusiastic yes. Astronauts have incredibly vivid dreams, just like you and me. Because they float all day long, they actually often dream about floating or flying. But sometimes they have very grounded dreams about simply returning home to Earth, walking on solid ground, and hugging their families. So their minds are still totally active, processing their incredible adventure while they snooze in their little treehouse pods.
Which leads us to another really fun trivia question about weird bodily functions in microgravity. Okay, so we know they dream, but can astronauts snore in space? If you happen to share a house with a really noisy sleeper, you might be wondering if an astronaut could accidentally keep the entire space station awake with their snoring.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the science behind the answer. Yes, they definitely can't snore, but they actually snore much less than they do down here on Earth. And here's why. Snoring happens when gravity pulls your tongue and the soft tissues to the back of your throat, which makes a rattling sound. But in space, there's no gravity pulling the tongue backward. The airway just stays wide open, making space a kind of natural cure for noisy sleepers.
Now, while the puffy faces and the lack of snoring are super fun facts, NASA actually takes sleep incredibly seriously. Astronauts have really demanding jobs, running complicated science experiments, operating giant robotic arms, and doing spacewalks outside the ship. I want you to imagine playing the hardest, most complicated video game ever, but in real life. If an astronaut is too tired and makes a mistake out in space, it is incredibly dangerous. So getting a good night's sleep keeps their brains sharp and everyone safe.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this massive number, 28,000. That is how many kilometers per hour the International Space Station is traveling right this very second, way faster than a speeding bullet. So the next time you climb into your comfortable bed and feel gravity hugging you safely against your mattress, take a moment to look up at the stars. Because right then, an astronaut might be sleeping miles above you, zipped up in a bag, strapped to a wall, and drifting silently through the dark.
Space forces us to completely rethink the most ordinary parts of our daily lives, even something as simple as taking a nap. And it just goes to show that there is always more to learn about how humans can adapt to the most extreme environments in the whole universe. So what will you discover when you never stop asking questions? Keep being curious, keep looking up, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.